Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Jim Terry from Market Square in Harrisburg. This is my wife Elizabeth, who was the real person who started the Ecology Action Committee at Market Square, and she's going to do most of the talking. I'm supposed to introduce things. So, we've been at this business for a few years, and we're very happy to have an invitation here to talk about how we became an Earth Care congregation and what you have to do and what you go through and some of the reasons for doing it. So I would like to open with, and I'm going to put this mic down to talk a little louder, or can't I do that with the film?
I don't know, we can try.
Okay. Well, we'll try doing it this way. A number of years ago, Elizabeth and I were at the Kennedy Space Center. And one of the things that they have there, has anybody visited the Kennedy Space Center in Florida? One of the things they have there is a film that was taken from a camera that was mounted on the back of an exploratory rocket going to the outer edges of the galaxy. And what happened, what you see in the beginning is the very first picture that we have all seen of the Earth. It's on all the banners and everything. But what happens is that Earth gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's nothing but a dot. And I was so taken by that. And I just inadvertently came across a writing by the late Carl Sanger, who writes about that. So I want to read first what he said. He said, and there it was, a single pixel, a pale blue dot. No continents, no national boundaries, no beings, no humans, just a dot. Just us. That's where we live. That's where everyone we know, everyone we love, everyone who's ever heard of every human being has ever lived on that pale blue dot. Every hopeful child, every couple in love, every prince and pauper, every revered religious leader, every corrupt politician, every scientist, every humble person living out his or her days, all of us, every one of us, and all the other beings live on that pale blue dot. He says, to me, it underscores our responsibility. Because if you look at that dot and you think of how fragile and vulnerable it is, our central responsibility is to cherish and care for the environment on the only home we've ever known, and the only home for all those other beings with whom we are so profoundly connected. Let us pray. Against the dark backdrop of infinite space, our planet appears so small, so vulnerable. Guide me, dear God, that I may cherish your earth and the life sustains with the best of my energy, my intelligence, my imagination, and my love. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. I feel like I need to take a deep breath after listening to that. It's so powerful. And speaks to how vulnerable our place is in this universe. Well, today, our objectives are going to be to talk about the why, what, and how of the PCUSA's Earth Care Congregation program. We also want to share a little bit of what Market Square has learned about the Earth Care program over the last years since 2016, when we originally started looking at the program and started doing work putting together our application. And we'd also like to answer any questions or concerns you may have about becoming an Earth Care congregation here at the congregation here at Derry. So, Janet, next slide. Thank you. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this quote, "The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it." So this quote is also on the Earth Care Congregation certification when you have it. And it really speaks to the sacred nature of this planet and all that lives here, not just humans, but all life. It's all God-infused. So why are you thinking about becoming an Earth Care congregation? So any of you have thoughts about actually why you went ahead and decided to do this, put your application together to start this work?
Well, it seemed like so many of the things on the audit we were already doing, and it seemed that whether or not we are consciously or intentionally doing these things to be an Earth Care congregation, we were. And it seemed like we should, be certified and then make plans to move ahead with it. So.
Oh, okay. So obviously you'd already been doing the work, is what you're saying. So moving ahead with that. So let me ask you, if you have a wallet or your phone here, would you just take that out? And I'm going to ask you to choose a picture of someone who is close to you, who is dear to you. Maybe a child or a grandchild. And just take a moment to take a look at that picture. I hope that the picture make you smile. Yeah, I think we all feel that way. And so I'd ask you, what kind of planet do we want to leave to that child, that person who is dear to you? An important reason for the kind of work that we're doing now and that we want to do in the future. So Jim, can you talk about why become an Earth Care congregation?
Well, since you started working on some of this stuff, there are about 4 main principles involved with becoming one. And one is that the Guide to Greening Presbyterian Churches puts that work within the, quote, human vocation of tilling and keeping the garden. And that's from Genesis, as well as Christ's charge to work with and for the most vulnerable, all of us, such in Matthew 25. And this leads to the moral question, because if our faith teaches us to work for justice, Earth Care is eco-justice. And I know a lot of you know what that term means. And it means defending and healing the creation that we've got here while working to assure justice for all creation and the human beings who live in it. And we all know that in the industrial development of this world, the fact is that many, many polluting factories, many places where pollutants were dumped into rivers, where raw sewage was pumped into rivers, were near the poorest neighborhoods. And those poorest neighborhoods were often black. And some of this was accidental, and some of it was deliberate. Our Market Square mission statement calls for, and part of our mission statement, it says, to work for justice, peace, and a sustainable environment. The other problem, of course, and the other reason is climate crisis. Discounting the present administration and their denial. The science is clear. We know perfectly well. In Pennsylvania, think about this, the state of Pennsylvania is responsible for 1% of all the global emissions. It is the third greatest emitter of greenhouse gas emission in the United States, only passed by Texas and California. So we all have work to do to try to reduce our negative impact on the climate, including our churches and our homes. And we're seeing how it is that the poorest and most vulnerable people on the planet who are currently suffering the gravest effects. A few years ago, Elizabeth and I were at a dinner meeting of the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and one of the speakers had been on the Joint Chiefs of Staff on the national government, and he said, climate crisis is a national security issue. I hadn't thought about it that way. But he said it's driving refugees. It's driving refugees from Iraq, from Syria, where living is becoming unsustainable when the average daytime temperature is 125. And that is going to mean that every country in Europe and in the northern western hemisphere is going to be a place that people are going to try to get to. I never thought about it that way, but that is also a problem. And finally, of course, what do we want to leave our children? What responsibility do we have? Do we pass on the crisis to them and make it their responsibility? What about your grandkids? What kind of human beings are enormously resilient, okay? Human beings will adapt. But what kind of earth are we going to leave them? So that is a very, very serious question.
So this is a slide from a picture that was taken on September 2019, a climate strike on the steps of our Capitol. And as you can see, there are a lot of young people here. And one of the things I think the church, we've wanted to do at Market Square is be able to support children and young people and their concerns for the climate as well. So what is this? We've been talking about this. What is PCUSA's call to restore creation? So the 202nd General Assembly, which was in 1990, which is a long time ago now, the Presbyterian Church adopted a resolution called Restoring Creation for Ecology and Justice. The call to restore the creation is a part of that resolution. And that resolution contains three major parts, which we're looking at here. And the first is, the resolution requires making and caring for restoring creation a priority of the church. It's not just something out to the side that we work at. And also that every aspect of the church and its mission needs to be engaged in caring for creation. In other words, it must be a principle taken into consideration, whether it's feeding people at a luncheon, deciding who should provide electricity, caring for church property, choosing palms on Palm Sunday, and even the choices of books for our library, or hymns for the church service. So, and not only that, but it establishes restoring creation as a continuing concern. It's not something which we do and we get our certification, but we have to go and make sure that we continue this as our church goes on. as we go on to different missions, that we're applying these principles of earth care as well. So, essentially this means that our work is never done. This is an ongoing principle of restoring and caring for our earth, our creation. Out of this whole resolution came the Earth Care Congregation Program, inviting qualified churches to become certified. So, what is an Earth Care Congregation? What does it do in order to become certified? First of all, the church has to commit to an Earth Care Pledge, which some of you know and are familiar with already. So let's take a look at the pledge on the handout. So it really makes a statement about what we've just talked about in terms of creation, that peace and justice is a part of God's plan for all creation, and that the earth and all creation are God's. So continuing, God calls us to be careful, humble stewards of this earth, and to protect and restore it for its own sake and for the future use and enjoyment of the human family. And I guess I would add as to the family of all beings on this planet. As God offers all people a special gift of peace through Jesus Christ, and through Christ reconciles all people to God, we are called to deal justly with one another and the earth. So, obviously you can see that there's 4 areas that many of you are already familiar with. The first is in our worship service and discipleship. We'll celebrate God's grace and glory in creation and declare that God calls us to cherish, protect, and restore this earth. In education, and this is part of what we're doing right now, we will seek learning and teaching opportunities to know and understand the threats to God's creation and the damage already inflicted. We will encourage and support each other in finding ways of keeping and healing the creation in response to God's call to earth keeping, justice, and community. Our facilities will be managed and maintained and upgraded in a manner that respects and cherishes all creation, human and non-human, while meeting equitably the needs of all people. In our buildings and grounds, we will use energy efficiently, conserve resources, and share what we have in abundance so that God's holy creation will be sustainable for all life and future generations. And number 4, our outreach. Our outreach will encourage public policy and community involvement that protects and restores the vulnerable and degraded earth, as well as oppressed and neglected people. We will be mindful that our personal and collective actions can positively or negatively affect our neighborhood, region, nation, and world. We will seek to achieve environmental justice through coalitions and ecumenical partnership. So that's quite a list of things that we are pledging to do when our session signs off on the Earth Care audit that we put together for our churches. So, in addition to the signing of the Earth Care Pledge, we have to complete actions in the 4 categories identified in the pledge, the ones that we just talked about. So each one, we have to have a minimum of 25 points in each of these categories that follow. So let's take a look at each of these categories now. Worship. So with worship, it's the idea of celebrating God's grace and glory in creation, declaring that God calls us to cherish, protect, and restore the earth, and to integrate earth care into all areas of worship, including sermons, prayers, hymns, and readings. So, next slide.
No.
So, an example, I put this up as an example of the idea of how we integrated earth care in our worship service. This is the front of the bulletin that was from Earth Sunday this last year. So as you can see, there's a focus on, obviously right from the very beginning of the service, about the earth. But in addition to that, we had a banner in the front of the sanctuary, a large banner, and this year, if I'm correct, it was a tree. Do you remember the tree banner? We have several banners that we use at different times. We have one of the blue marble earth. We have one of just a tree, a large green tree. And then we also have one that was used this year at the service that we gave during the season of creation. And that was of different colors, the colors of yellow for the sun and for light, blue for water, and green for earth, which was really very lovely as well. So in addition to that, we included in the service the issue of the earth and a prayer for confession and our affirmation of faith. We had a special offering for Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light in that service, which we gave to them as a donation. And the closing prayer was for the beauty of the earth. So that's just kind of an example of what we were doing in one worship service, and trying to really integrate all these aspects of earth care into one particular service. So Jim.
One of the tricks with a worship service is to get the staff of the church on the same page as the Ecology Committee is, which sometimes isn't easy. And to integrate what the minister is going to do with what the minister of music is going to do, with what appears in the bulletin, and get everybody working together so those Sundays that we emphasize earth care are an integrated worship service, and not just a one-off of somebody talking about earth care for 15 minutes or so. It's the entire service. Now, with education, of course, and there again is a way of trying to support each of us. We do adult forums all the time in our church on earth care. We regularly schedule. Allison, and I know many of you know Allison, she runs that for us. And we make sure that we bring in guest speakers. For example, this past September, we brought in Rob Altenberg. He's the Senior Director for Energy and Climate on Penn Future. One of the good things of those of us who live here in central Pennsylvania, one of the advantages is we live near the state capitol. And because we live near the state capitol, we live near a lot of lobbyists, which is good or bad, depending on what you want to lobby for. But it does mean that people from Penn Future and other organizations dealing with the question of climate and climate change and environmental justice and so on are pretty easy to reach. And they're always willing to come and talk. And that's been a really good thing too. So we publish a publication, most churches do, every month, and we call it Marketplace for obvious reasons. And we have a page, our Ecology Action Committee has a page always called Earth Wisdom, where we give suggestions, usually an article that someone writes on how to save on plastics in your house, what to do about toothpaste tubes, how can you make your home more energy friendly, these kinds of things. So we try to constantly be in the focus of the congregation to reminding people. And we hold educational events with this past Earth Sunday, we focused on plastics. And we had speakers in talking about the impact of plastics on the environment. We talk about ways we can reduce plastics in our life. We all know the problem. but sometimes we don't know what to do about it, you know. What are the practical things that you and I can do? And we say, well, what's the difference if I use a plastic toothpaste tube, or I get a little jar that's sent to me with little capsules? A lot of you are old enough to remember tooth powder, a few of you maybe. But that's really what it is if you chew it up now. But what it means, you're no longer buying that plastic tube which you're going to throw out. And you say, well, you know, what difference does it make if I do that? But what difference does it make if 100,000 people do that? You got to start someplace. So, you know, there's a Syrian a parable I always loved. This little bird drops from the sky, and he's laying in the road with his feet in the air, and the king's soldier comes by, and he says, "What are you doing, little bird?" And he says, "Well, I fell out of the sky." He says, "Well, so what? Why are your feet up in the air?" He said, "Well, I'm trying to hold the sky up. I think it's breaking up." And the king's soldier said, "Well, that's silly, little bird. What are you going to do to hold the sky up with those little tiny feet?" And the bird says, "We all do what we can." So, we all do what we can. We try to provide books and games for kids in the church. We have a library at our church. There's a whole shelf on environmental questions and earth care questions. And so we try to engage the congregation in a variety of ways. And one of the more famous speakers we had came to our adult forum, and I'll let Elizabeth talk a little bit about Jane Blewett.
So this is Jane, and she actually came and spoke at Market Square on two different occasions. In this slide, she's about 90. She's now, I think, about 98, and she's definitely retired. She was a nun in her life and worked in nursing missions, but she also was a protege of Thomas Berry. Some of you may know Thomas Berry, who was an eco-theologian. So what the importance of this adult forum really was that she helped our congregation to understand that we needed to think differently about the words we use. We had talked about our focus being on the environment and environmental issues, which makes a lot of sense to what we were interested in doing. But Jane helped us to see the importance of thinking about ecology as our focus rather than the environment. And it comes back to looking at the origin of these words. The word environment comes from the French environ, around, which means around or surrounding. The word ecology comes from the Greek oikos, meaning house, and also logos, study of. So nature, what was just surrounding us. When we spoke of nature, we're talking about our home. We're not separate from it. We're a part of it. And that is when actually we changed the name of the committee that we were working with, from the Environmental Action Committee to the Ecology Action Committee. And so that had been a really important concept change for us at Market Square.
Well, shortly after our Ecology Committee got started, I had the honor, or I was conned into becoming president of the Board of Trustees. And the first thing that we did was to conduct an energy audit of the church, looking at everything from light bulbs to heating units, to how do the doors fit, how tight are the windows, how are we going to save the energy that the church is using. And at about that same time, our HVAC system needed to be replaced. Now, in our church, when you go up to the second level, and you get off the elevator and look at the roof, there's a flat roof there, and that's where our air conditioning generators, our old ones, were located. We thought, wow, we can take those out and we can put solar panels in that place. Except that the Chestnut Street parking garage rises right alongside that roof, and there's no sunshine on that square ever. We even had people come and, solar people come and say, hey, you're not gonna get anything out. Well, that was a very big disappointment, let me tell you. So we had to go to more traditional sources. But we have a computerized energy system, which works most of the time. It allows our staff to turn heat on and off, air conditioning on and off in different rooms that we're not using. She can do it at home on her phone, and that helps. We decided to go and purchase renewable energy. So it was my job to contact a whole bunch of people supplying, mostly, as you know, wind and solar. Ironically, most of it located in Texas, which is a great irony. But really the largest producers of wind power in this country right now are in Texas. And so we signed contracts with them, Now, one of the problems with that, and it's a good thing, mind you, but remember that solar and energy, that wind energy doesn't come directly to your house or to your church. It's fed into electrical grid, and some of you know this. And currently, the regional average in the Mid-Atlantic region reads like this. 20% of the energy, it comes from coal, still. 41% comes from natural gas. That big old coal-fired thing up near Shamokin Dam is now 100% natural gas. 33% of it comes from nuclear. And when you add it all up, right now, sources of renewable energy in the Mid-Atlantic energy grid is about 7%. Now, 5 years ago, it was 3%. That's progress, but you can see the difficulty, okay? One of the difficulties is that getting everybody in the church to stop using plastic bags, utensils, paper plates, styrofoam. Boy, that's been a tough one. So finally we managed to do it. We simply got rid of all of it. We have a program in our church, because we are a downtown church in Harrisburg. We feed between 160 and 200 homeless people breakfast every Sunday morning, 52 weeks a year. And we do it in 60 minutes, by the way. Yeah. Now, we changed all of those all the utensils, all the plates, everything, to silverware, the plates that you wash, cups that you wash, nothing thrown away. During the pandemic, we couldn't do that. We had to go back to takeout, styrofoam, all the rest. But after that, we went back to doing that and reducing that waste. There's always going to be a problem. Our dishwasher broke. We had to go back to using plastic and throw away until we could get the dishwasher fixed. So, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So but we did that, We actively try to recycle. But remember, what are you going to do with those cardboard boxes? They're not coming to pick them up. Somebody in your church is going to have to take them to a recycling center. Okay? It's okay. There's another thing we have to do. Glass bottles, cardboard. It adds up more than you might think. Try to serve fair trade coffee. It's available. You can buy it. Take a look at all the cleaning products. get rid of everything that's not toxic. They're out there. People sell them all the time. Our facilities manager's been great about that. He's been super about it, going through everything that we had and changing everything over so that we're not doing that, okay? So it takes a while to go through all of this just in your physical plan. But that doesn't mean it can't be done because it can't be done, and because it can. And so that's one of the most important things to work on. When we talk about outreach, we try to, and again, it's useful to be in Harrisburg because we can talk with lobbyists and we can visit state legislators, a little easier for us, to encourage public policy and work for environmental justice, because that is a big problem. Many of you know that the Pennsylvania Constitution has an amendment called the Environmental Rights Amendment, in which it says that the people of Pennsylvania are entitled to clean water and clean air. And for years, the legislature treated that amendment as a joke and ignored it. Until finally, people began to bring lawsuits against the state government. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, you know what? You guys have to follow the Constitution of this state. You have to be responsible for that. You can't just blow it off. We had a symposium with Frank Curry. Some of you know that Franklin Curry was the author of that. And so we brought Senator Curry in, well, he's retired now, in to talk with us and the lawyers who brought the lawsuit. And so the congregation, and this was on an afternoon, the community would come. So this was a part of us saying, how do we educate people? Let's bring in the people who are involved in this thing and have them talk, rather than us. And so that's an example of what we tried to do. Try to sponsor nature walks, camping trips, encourage members, again, to talk to their elected officials about environmental questions, and co-sponsor events with other churches, other congregations, co-sponsor events with Bethel Synagogue in Harrisburg. Try to reach out, in other words, to the community. And support a community garden, of which Janet and Elizabeth are way more involved in that. But we have our church group, or part of our people work in the 5 Senses Garden in Harrisburg and maintain that as a project of the church. And we try to work as responsibly as possible with the Pennsylvania Forest and Parks Foundation. We sent some people to work in the Michaud State Forest last year on a project of planting things. And try, in fact, to do everything we can to engage the community with what we're trying to do. I'll let Elizabeth speak more about the community garden.
So this is a picture. We have had sponsored numerous kinds of, over the years, nature walks. This was one in the 5 Senses Garden where we continued to work. We weren't working there at the time we did the walk. We were just getting acquainted with it. I don't know if any of you have been to the 5 Senses Garden in Harrisburg, but it really is worth going and seeing, because it's really come along over the last several years under the leadership of Cindy Hoagman, who is a master gardener in Dauphin County. So this was one of an example of one of the nature walks we did. And then this is an example of the garden. And obviously this is a part of our gardening group. And we were there, we adopted officially the Taste Garden and the 5 Senses Garden. We've been working on it for, I think, about 3 or 4 years.
We started in 2020.
We started in 2020. Okay. So, and that was really when they were trying to turn the garden around. Believe me, it was pretty sad when we started. But gradually, it's been turned around and it's really beautiful. But the other part of it is, beside from just that, is that you wouldn't believe how many people come by. People, it can be people that live near there, people from, there's some developments that are not, I don't know, low income housing that's not far. People come by with their children and say how beautiful the garden is, how much they enjoy it, that it's a place of peace. And so we really feel that that's another important mission and outreach. If we can have any way we can bring about some feeling of peace, especially in the chaotic times in which we live, that's a really good thing. And it can touch people of any income level. So, so I want to go back just to go over briefly what are the steps to becoming an Earth Care congregation. Obviously, you've gone over a lot of this. Basically, you have an Earth Care team. We were lucky; we already had a committee that we could work with, doing the audit of your Earth Care activities, presenting that audit information to session, requesting session's approval of the Earth Care pledge, and then doing your application as you've done. PCUSA's responsibility is to review the application and audit to make sure that you've earned the necessary points and in each of the categories, and then to award the Earth Care certificate. So just to go over what we did at Market Square, we had already formed our Ecology Action Committee, and we had already begun hosting Earth Care activities and programs. We just didn't call them that at the time. We collaborated with other churches that led an Earth Care congregation, and that was really important for us because when we first started this, we were kind of overwhelmed with the audit and everything on it, and oh, how are we going to do this? And we had a person from Pine Street come and talk to us about what they had done, and that just kind of got us going. It gave us enough confidence to really begin to think, well, we're on our way to doing the Earth Care and being a part of the Earth Care, getting the Earth Care certificate. So we met with the pastor at the church to discuss the program because we needed to have him on board, and then we asked session to adopt a motion just to support the congregation in this program, even before we had the pledge before them, so that they knew what was going on and they were already supporting it. And then the part 2 was just doing what you've already done, doing the Earth Care audit, implementing the Earth Care activities that we wanted to do, add, and then we submitted it in January 2018 for approval, and we received our certificate in March 2018. And we have our last slide here. Our certificate, which hangs in our atrium right now. We're still very proud of that. Actually hanging beside a large copy of the Environmental Rights Amendment, which Frank Curry had signed when he visited the church and talked about it. So I think at this point, what we'd like to do is just ask if there were any comments or questions you have. We have a little bit of time left.
Yes, like at home and a lot of other places, we have 2 big bins that come from the trash company. One's for recyclables and one for other trash. And recyclables, we put in glass and plastic and cardboard. Where does that go, and is that a good thing?
Can you answer that? You're in Dauphin County.
I'm in Lebanon County
You're in
myself.
Lebanon County.
We're Dauphin County here.
Yeah, I don't know about the Lebanon County. One of the problems that we have is that all the counties do this differently. And right now, the problem is that maybe 1%, 10%, I'm sorry, out of the picture. 10% maybe of the plastic is recycled. There's no market for it. So they burn it up, or they bury it. So the downstream problems are significant, and that's a serious concern. The cardboard's mostly okay. The cardboard's recycled pretty generally, and that's pretty much every place. Glass is recycled pretty much everything. The plastic is the problem. There's so much of it. They can't, there's no market. Some of it, unfortunately, is shipped overseas, as some of you know. So that's a difficult problem, because you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm doing a good thing by putting it in this bin. But what happens to it after that? But it does differ county from county, it really does. And I don't know about Lebanon, I really don't.
What do they recycle glass into?
Pardon?
Well, what do they recycle glass into?
More glass.
Paving,
Okay.
tires. Yeah. A lot of it goes into paving material, as much as anything. I mean, some of you may know, anybody else know where the glass goes?
More glass.
More glass.
More
Yeah,
glass,
I can
yeah.
see that.
That's true, yeah, smell it, yeah, and build again, which is okay, because it's recycled, but, you know.
Just a comment, up at Camp Chrisland, they have a bench made totally of plastics that were recycled,
Yeah. okay.
which is good. I mean,
Yeah, there's a
it was
problem.
nice to see that.
Yeah,
In the Taste Garden, we also have benches that have been made out of recycled plastic. Probably, we could get a lot of that plastic just by trash that gets thrown around, so. But
yeah, okay. What was it? Yes, ma'am.
Do you ever see in the United States or in Pennsylvania a system like they have in Switzerland and Germany for recycling, where people are responsible to go to not like a big recycling center, that all neighborhoods have like
Yeah.
recycling, and you sort your recycling. Like you put your green glass here, you put your
Yeah.
clear glass here, you put this here, and they don't use as much plastic as we do.
Right.
And they, which I thought is a great system, because you're not having to drive during certain hours. The only day you can't recycle is Sunday.
Yeah.
So,
It's partially a commitment by local governments to do that, and educating, training the public to do it. And we were just at BWI Airport last month, and they have trash and they have recycling. Take a look at the recycling, and you're shaking your head because you know, right? People they just throw it, you might as well just forget it. So it's also a matter of education, and that takes a lot of time.
How have you sought to involve the youth of your congregation in the environmental ministry?
Oh, see,
Well, in all honesty, we do not have a lot of youth in our congregation right now. We had the children that we had have graduated from high school and moved on. We have a couple of children, Janet.
The pollinator garden. was
Yeah,
done
they-
by the youth.
There was a pollinator garden that was done by youth, and the youth have been very active before they went on to their adult lives. But we have had, and then we also had the pandemic, and which affected certainly involvement in the church and attendance. And in all honesty, I think what we have seen is a hesitancy in a lot of young families to want to come into the city with the family, when there's so many churches that are in the suburbs right now that are large. They're large churches, and they have all kinds of fun things for kids. I hate to say fun things for kids to do that are more apt to attract families than coming to a traditional inner city church. So we have a few young people. So we really are not able to, you know, at this point in time, do much with youth unless it's a special activity where we have, sometimes there are children's groups that come into the city for a special activity, and then sometimes they've used the church and come over to the church.
Have you sought to integrate in some way the 160 people who come in for breakfast on Sunday mornings into a practice or an involvement that would contribute to birth care, by replacing their plastic bags that so many of them carry or something with I'm just wondering if that is an opportunity to practice earth care in some way by
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
involving them. I mean, since you don't have the youth, they have children in many cases.
Well, that's a good idea. I don't have a good answer for you, but I think that that's something that we should think about. Because yes, a lot of them have a lot of plastic. We have tried to think about, at a food pantry that we have on Saturday mornings, what can we have people use instead of handing out like a plastic bag for them to put their things in? And we have not come up with the best solution for that at this point, just because often the paper, you know, breaks when they get a lot of cans and so on in it, in a paper bag, and they need to have it be portable. So we're trying to work on that, but yeah, that's a good suggestion with our morning breakfast, that's for sure. Janet, do you have anything to add? Jim?
No, but I think it's a good thing to take to our next meeting.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Janet?
With AI, there's a big need for additional electricity, and at TMI they're starting up one of the towers. That's supposed to be clean energy. I just thought I'd get a comment on doing that in particular.
Well, we might have two different opinions here on this, because I have been long ago even involved with the licensing of the units of those plants. I was an early environmental activist, and so I'm very concerned about what it means, because there's still the same kinds of issues with possibility of health effects from radiation or an accident and so on. But we're in a different world now, and the world with problems with climate and so on that are caused by fossil fuels. So it's really pretty hard right now to, I guess, to parse that, figure that out. But Jim, you want to?
Yeah, to give you an example, the township supervisors in Hampton Township, which is used to be the fastest growing township in Cumberland County, and now Silver Springs next to it seems to be. They voted down a data center for that reason. But a lot of places don't. And we know it chews up enormous amounts. It's going to drive electricity rates up. We know that already. It uses enormous amounts of water. And local governments are really faced with the challenge of trying to figure out how to mitigate this stuff, unless they just, ban it altogether. We've seen places where some townships and some local governments in their planning, zoning commissions have said, you can build one of those if you cover the entire roof with solar panels. And some of them are doing it anyway. And that's a good thing. That's a percentage of electricity. But it's, I don't know, in Pennsylvania, we've seen this movie before. I come from Tioga County. In 1910, there was not a single marketable tree left standing in Tioga County. When I was a kid, growing up, I couldn't understand why all the rocks in the Tioga River that ran through town were orange. Until I learned there was acid runoff from all the coal mines. Right. Then, of course, we got natural gas, and here is Pennsylvania with one of the largest deposits of natural gas in the country. And now, yeah, we've seen this film before. And the challenge of local governments, and you can see it clearly in Pennsylvania, is how to mitigate the downside to the use of those energy sources. Because if anybody thinks we're going to ban natural gas in Pennsylvania, they should think again, because it's not going to happen. So how do we mitigate the downside to it? And you don't see it around here, but up in Tioga County and Bradford County and Lycoming County, you see it. You see it a lot. Yes, ma'am.
I guess one of the issues I have with a lot of solar power is people don't realize that the components in the solar power are a mineral that's harvested like in Africa and South Africa.
Yes, yes.
And the condition for them miners is awful.
Yep.
They have awful living conditions.
Yep.
These people that are digging this ore out of the ground
Yeah.
that is used for solar
And
power.
some places are changing the source of those minerals.
But a lot of
But
it is
it-
from
but
there.
no, you're absolutely
and
correct.
It's,
Yeah.
if you see these trucks that move on these little highways, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they make you nervous, but, I can't remember the name of it was a mineral I never heard of before.
Right.
So it really isn't totally renewable because we still need a mineral to create the solar
Yeah.
panels, and the solar car batteries are really use this
Yeah.
mineral. And that's why a lot of European countries have, don't allow solar cars because of this mineral.
Yeah,
being
that's
mined.
correct. And I was just reading the other day that General Motors is going to another source for their batteries rather than the lithium, going to magnesium, which is more easily mined in the United States than someplace else. But yeah, I mean, practically everything we talk about here has another side to it.
Yeah.
And so the question always is, you know, what's a trade-off? Yeah, but you're right. So sometimes we think, well, we're doing good, but are we doing it at the expense of these other people?
Mhm.
Any other questions, anybody? Well,
Anybody
we want
else?
to thank everyone here for
Thank
giving us
you.
your time.
There.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and if you actually have any interest in, you know, maybe working with other churches, you certainly know where to find us, and on these, working together on these issues. So, and good luck.
Thank you.
You're on your road, so great.
Thank you.